Some people say that the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. You know the kind I'm talking about. The lies that keep you in a warm bed when the house is burning down around you. The lies that say, he's just stressed, or it'll get better once this big project is over, or at least he provides for us. We tell ourselves these things because the alternative, the cold, hard truth, is usually too terrifying to look in the eye. But what happens when you run out of lies? What happens when the truth isn't just a feeling in your gut, but a digital recording staring back at you in high definition? Today's story is about a woman named Elena, who spent years perfecting the art of the lie, polishing the surface of a rotting marriage until it shined like a diamond. But on one freezing Tuesday night, the polish wore off, and she was forced to look at the cracks. And let me tell you, what she found in those cracks wasn't just a bad husband. It was a monster. And the only thing standing between her and total destruction was a silent, unblinking eye mounted in the corner of her living room ceiling. Buckle up, because this isn't just a breakup story. This is a story about how technology became the judge, jury, and executioner of a man who thought he was untouchable. It started on a Tuesday, the kind of day that feels like a victory lap. Elena walked out of the glass doors of her downtown office building and felt the cold wind hit her face. But for the first time in months, she didn't mind the chill. She had just closed the merger. The unclosable deal. The one her boss said was a pipe dream. She'd spent 6 months navigating egos, rewriting contracts, and smoothing over ruffled feathers, and today, the ink was finally dry. She was a powerhouse. In that boardroom, she was respected. She was feared. She was competent. She got into her car, the leather seat cold against her back, and let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for half a year. The silence of the car was luxurious. For a moment, she allowed herself to fantasize about the evening ahead. Maybe she would pick up that Thai food Marcus liked. Maybe, just maybe, because she had brought in a massive bonus, the tension in the house would dissipate. Marcus respected success, right? He was a finance guy, a closer himself. Surely, tonight they could just be a normal couple. 2 high achievers clinking wine glasses, watching their 8-year-old daughter, Lily, play on the rug. But as she merged onto the highway, watching the city skyline shrink in the rearview mirror, that familiar knot formed in her stomach. You know the one. The walking on eggshells knot. The closer she got to her driveway, the more the boardroom victory faded, replaced by the crushing reality of her domestic life. See, Marcus wasn't just driven. That was the word Elena used when she was making excuses for him to her friends. Oh, Marcus is just so driven, he's a perfectionist. In reality, Marcus was a narcissist wrapped in a tailored suit. He didn't just want to succeed, he wanted to be worshipped. And more importantly, he wanted total control. Over his image, over his career, and increasingly over Elena and Lily. The traffic was heavy, giving Elena too much time to think. Her mind drifted back to last week. A simple memory, but one that stuck like a burr. Lily had wanted to show Marcus a drawing she'd made at school. A picture of the 3 of them holding hands under a giant yellow sun. She'd run up to him while he was checking emails on his phone. Marcus hadn't even looked up. He just swiped her away with his hand, like she was a fly buzzing around his head. Not now, Lily. Daddy is building an empire. Go watch a screen. Elena had seen Lily's face crumble. She had seen the light go out in her daughter's eyes. Elena had intervened, of course, soothing Lily, telling her daddy was just busy. But the excuse tasted like ash in her mouth. How many times can you tell a child that they are less important than an email before they start to believe they don't matter at all? Elena gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles turning white. Not tonight, she told herself. Tonight is a good night. I won, and we are going to celebrate. She turned into their subdivision, the manicured lawns and identical mailboxes usually offering a sense of order. But as she rounded the corner to her house, her heart dropped into her shoes. Cars. Not just 1 or 2. The driveway was packed. A black SUV was parked halfway on the lawn. Marcus hated it when people parked on the lawn, unless, of course, they were people he was trying to impress. The lights in the house were blazing. Even from the street, through the closed windows, she could see the silhouette of movement. A lot of movement. Her peaceful Tuesday night, her celebration, her quiet moment with her family. It was gone before she'd even put the car in park. Marcus was throwing a party. A Tuesday night mixer. He hadn't texted her. He hadn't called. He had just decided that their home was now a venue. This was a power move. Elena knew it. It was his way of saying, I do what I want when I want, and you will accommodate me. She checked her reflection in the visor mirror. She looked tired, but the adrenaline of the workday was still there, now mixed with a spike of irritation. She touched up her lipstick, put on her corporate wife mask, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and got out of the car. As she unlocked the front door, the noise hit her. A wall of laughter, the clinking of expensive glass, the low thump of jazz music that Marcus insisted was classy. The hallway was filled with people she vaguely recognized. Junior associates from Marcus's firm, a couple of potential clients, the type of people who laughed too loud at unfunny jokes because the person telling them had money. Elena moved through the crowd like a ghost. A few people nodded at her, raising their glasses, but most ignored her. She was just part of the furniture, the prop wife in Marcus's grand stage play. She scanned the room for him. And there he was, holding court by the fireplace. He looked impeccable, of course. Charcoal suit, no tie, top button undone to show just the right amount of casual confidence. He was holding a scotch, gesturing broadly with his free hand, telling some story where he was undoubtedly the hero. The group around him hung on his every word. "So I told him," Marcus boomed, his voice carrying over the music, "if you want to play in the big leagues, you have to be willing to bleed a little. But preferably, you make the other guy bleed first." The circle erupted in sycophantic laughter. Marcus beamed, basking in the glow of their adoration. He was the perfect successful man. The provider. The king of his castle. But Elena wasn't looking at the king. She was looking for the princess. Where was Lily? Normally, if people were over, Lily would be tucked away in her room with headphones on, or maybe sitting quietly on the stairs watching the adults. But the stairs were empty. Elena pushed past a woman spilling red wine dangerously close to the white sofa and headed for the kitchen. Empty. Just a chaotic spread of catered appetizers that Marcus must have ordered last minute. She went upstairs. Lily's room was dark. The bed was made. A cold prickle of fear started at the base of Elena's neck. It wasn't panic yet, just a heightened sense of alertness. She checked the guest room. The bathroom. Nothing. She went back downstairs, the noise of the party now sounding grating, like static in her brain. She caught Marcus's eye across the room. He saw her, and for a split second his smile faltered. A flash of annoyance crossed his face. How dare she interrupt his performance by existing? But he recovered instantly, raising his glass to her in a mock toast before turning back to his audience. He didn't care that she was home. He didn't care about her day. Elena ignored him. She moved toward the back of the house, toward the sliding glass doors that led to the patio. Maybe Lily was hiding in the backyard playing with the dog? But as she got closer to the glass, she stopped. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn, but there was a gap. Through the gap, she could see the balcony. It was freezing outside. November in the northeast. The kind of cold that bites your skin the second you step out. The wind was howling, rattling the panes in their frames. And there, huddled in the corner of the balcony, was a small shape. Elena's brain took a second to process what she was seeing. It didn't make sense. It couldn't be. The shape moved. It was Lily. She was wearing her thin cotton pajamas, the pink ones with the unicorns. No coat. No shoes. Just socks on the freezing concrete. She was curled into a ball, hugging her knees to her chest, her face buried in her arms. The world stopped. The jazz music, the laughter, the clinking glasses, it all dropped away into a vacuum of pure horror. Elena didn't scream. She didn't faint. A cold, steely rage, unlike anything she had ever felt before, flooded her veins. It was the primal override switch that flips in a mother's brain when her child is threatened. She didn't burst through the crowd. She didn't make a scene, not yet. She knew that if she screamed at Marcus in front of his boss, it would become a he said, she said. He would spin it. He would say Lily locked herself out. He would say Elena was hysterical. He was a master of the narrative. No, she needed to get to her daughter. Elena slid the glass door open. The rush of cold air was shocking, stealing the breath from her lungs. It was freezing. Literally freezing. Lily. Elena's voice cracked. The little girl jerked her head up. Her face was a mess of tears and snot, her lips trembling and pale, bordering on blue. When she saw Elena, she didn't just look relieved. She looked terrified. She looked guilty. "Mommy." Lily chattered, her teeth clicking together. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Elena fell to her knees on the cold concrete and scooped her daughter up. Lily was like a block of ice. Her small body was vibrating with shivering. Shoo, I've got you," Elena whispered, pulling Lily inside and slamming the door shut against the wind. She wrapped her blazer around the child, rubbing her arms frantically to generate heat. "Why are you sorry, baby? What happened? Did you get locked out?" They were huddled in the small alcove between the curtains and the door, hidden from the party guests. It felt like they were in a different dimension, a dimension of cold and cruelty, just inches away from the warmth and excess of Marcus's ego trip. Lily looked toward the living room, her eyes wide with fear. "Daddy said I was being a disgrace." Elena froze. "What?" "I just wanted water," Lily sobbed quietly, trying to stifle the sound so the people inside wouldn't hear. "I came down for water, and I tripped on the rug. I didn't mean to. I spilled a little bit near the man with the red tie." Elena felt sick. A spill. An accidental spill by an 8-year-old. And then, Elena pressed, her voice trembling with suppressed fury. "Daddy grabbed me," Lily whispered. "He hurt my arm. He said I was embarrassing him. He said if I couldn't act like a human being, I should stay outside like a dog." Elena closed her eyes. The image was searing itself into her brain. Her husband, the man she had vowed to love, dragging their child to the door and throwing her out into the freezing night because she spilled water. "He locked the door," Lily added, the final nail in the coffin. "I knocked, Mommy. I knocked for a long time. But he turned the music up. That was it. That was the moment the marriage died. It didn't die with a whimper. It died with the sound of a child knocking on a glass door while her father laughed on the other side." Elena looked at Lily's arm. Even in the dim light, she could see the red marks beginning to form on her upper arm. Finger marks. Large, aggressive grip marks. This wasn't strict parenting. This wasn't a bad mood. This was abuse. Elena's mind raced. She wanted to march into that living room and tear Marcus apart with her bare hands. She wanted to smash a wine bottle over his head. She wanted to burn the house down. But she stopped herself. She looked at the party guests. They were oblivious. If she went out there now screaming, Marcus would put on his sad, confused face. "Oh, honey, you know how imaginative Lily is. She probably went out to look at the stars, and the door stuck. You're overreacting. You're tired from work." He would gaslight her. He would gaslight the guests. He would make her look like the crazy, unstable wife. And later, when the guests were gone, he would make them pay for the humiliation. She needed proof. Indisputable, objective, cold hard proof. She needed the silent witness. About a year ago, after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood, Marcus had insisted on installing a top-of-the-line security system. Cameras everywhere. The front door, the backyard, the hallway, and the living room. He had wanted them to protect his assets. He loved to check them from his phone when they were on vacation, making sure his expensive TV and art collection were safe. He loved the control. But in his arrogance, Marcus had forgotten one crucial detail. The camera doesn't care who it's filming. The camera has no loyalty. It just sees. "Come on, baby," Elena whispered. She picked Lily up, ignoring the strain in her back. "We're going to go to the kitchen quietly, get some warm milk, and go up the back stairs." "Okay." She navigated them through the shadows, avoiding the main cluster of the party. She got Lily upstairs into a hot bath and into fresh, warm pajamas. She sat with her until the shivering stopped, until Lily's breathing evened out into an exhausted sleep. Once Lily was safe, Elena walked into her own bedroom. She closed the door and locked it. She sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking, not from cold, but from adrenaline. She opened the security app. Connect to Home Hub. The little loading circle spun. It felt like it took an hour. Connected. She selected Living Room Cam. She scrolled back on the timeline. 45 minutes ago. She pressed play. On the small screen, she saw the room in high-definition 4K resolution. She saw the guests mingling. She saw Marcus holding court. Then she saw Lily enter the frame. She was holding a cup of water, looking sleepy and small. She saw Lily catch her toe on the edge of the Persian rug. The water splashed onto the floor, a few drops hitting the shoe of a guest. The guest laughed, clearly not bothered. He patted Lily on the head. It was a non-event. But then she saw Marcus. On the screen, his face transformed. The charming smile vanished instantly, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. It was like a demon surfacing. He crossed the room in 2 strides. He didn't speak to Lily. He grabbed her. Elena gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. The video confirmed Lily's words, but seeing it was visceral. Marcus grabbed the child by her upper arm, his fingers digging in deep. He jerked her so hard her head snapped back. She saw him lean down and hiss something into her ear. The audio on the camera was good, too good. "You clumsy little mistake. You're ruining everything." Elena's tears blurred the screen. Then the shove. He didn't just guide her to the door. He dragged her to the sliding glass, unlocked it, and shoved her out with enough force that Lily stumbled and fell onto the concrete. Then the most chilling part. Marcus slid the door shut. He locked it. He turned the handle to make sure. He stood there for a second, watching his crying daughter through the glass. And then he adjusted his cufflinks. He ran a hand through his hair. He turned back to the party and literally switched the smile back on. Within 3 seconds, he was laughing at a joke, holding a fresh drink, while his daughter froze 5 feet away from him. Elena paused the video. The silence in the bedroom was deafening. Downstairs, the bass of the music thumped rhythmically, like a heartbeat. This wasn't a marriage problem. This wasn't something counseling could fix. This was a crime scene. She sat there, staring at the frozen image of Marcus's smiling face. She thought about the last 10 years. The slow erosion of her confidence. The way he made her feel like she was lucky he put up with her. The way he isolated her from her friends. The way he made Lily feel small. It all clicked into place. The bruises she had dismissed as accidents. The mood swings. It was all part of the same sickness. She looked at the timestamp on the video. It was recorded less than an hour ago. Elena stood up. The shaking had stopped. A strange calm settled over her. It was the calm of a soldier who realizes the diplomacy is over and the war has begun. She wasn't just a wife anymore. She wasn't just a professional. She was a witness. And she held the smoking gun in her hand. She could leave now. She could pack a bag, grab Lily, and sneak out the back. Go to a hotel. Call a lawyer in the morning. That's what the logical part of her brain said. But then she heard Marcus's laugh drift up from the floorboards. That booming, confident fake laugh. He thought he had won. He thought he could toss his child out like garbage and still play the role of the benevolent king. He thought his reputation was bulletproof. Elena looked at her phone again. She looked at the cast-to-device icon in the corner of the video player. She knew they had a 75-inch smart TV in the living room. The one Marcus insisted on buying to show off football games. The one that was currently displaying a slideshow of family photos as a backdrop to the party. Pictures of them smiling on vacations, looking like the perfect family. A dangerous idea formed in Elena's mind. It was reckless. It was nuclear. It would destroy everything, the house, the social standing, the comfortable life. It would burn it all to the ground. But looking at that video, seeing the cruelty in her husband's eyes, Elena realized something. The house was already burning. She was just the only one who could see the flames. Why should she sneak away in the night? Why should she be the one to run? Marcus cared about his image more than anything in the world. His reputation was his armor. What happens if you strip a knight of his armor in the middle of the battlefield? Elena wiped her face. She smoothed her skirt. She checked on sleeping Lily one last time, planting a soft kiss on her forehead. "I've got this, baby," she whispered. She picked up her phone. She walked to the bedroom door and unlocked it. As she stepped out into the hallway, hearing the roar of the party below, she felt a shift. She was crossing a threshold. The woman who walked up those stairs, the peacekeeper, the accommodator, the victim, was gone. The woman walking down the stairs was something else entirely. She was the reckoning. She reached the top of the staircase and looked down at the crowd. Marcus was right in the center, directly in front of the massive TV screen, holding court. He didn't see her yet. But he would. They all would. Elena took the first step down. And that begs the question. If you held the power to destroy your abuser's life with the push of a button, but you knew it would cost you your home, your security, and everything you've built, would you press it? Or would you quietly pack your bags and run? Elena made her choice. We're going to see exactly what happens when the truth gets played on the big screen. The staircase felt endless. Every step Elena took was a heavy, deliberate declaration of war, though no one in the room below knew it yet. The jazz music was still thumping, a smooth saxophone solo that felt grotesquely out of place against the chaotic drumming of her own heart. Below her, the party was reaching that peak volume where conversation turns into shouting matches of laughter and ego-stroking. She watched the tops of heads, expensive haircuts, shimmering jewelry, the trappings of a life she had spent a decade curating. It was a beautiful prison, and she was about to blow the walls out. Marcus was standing exactly where she had left him in her mind's eye, center stage, holding a crystal tumbler of amber liquid. He was mid-anecdote, his free hand chopping the air to emphasize some point about market volatility or corporate dominance. His boss, a silver-haired man named Richard, was nodding appreciatively. A few of the younger associates were looking at Marcus with that hungry, desperate admiration that Marcus fed on like a vampire. Elena reached the bottom step. She didn't blend into the shadows this time. She walked straight into the light of the chandelier. For a moment, nobody noticed. Then Richard looked up and smiled. "Elena, there she is, the woman of the hour. Marcus was just telling us you closed the Henderson deal. Incredible work." The circle opened up. Marcus turned, and for a split second, Elena saw the flash of irritation in his eyes, the microscopic tightening of the jaw that said, "You're off script. You're supposed to be invisible right now." But the mask slammed back into place instantly. He beamed, extending an arm to drape around her waist. It was a gesture that looked possessive to everyone else, but Elena knew the weight of that arm. It was a clamp. A warning. "There's my superstar," Marcus announced, his voice booming with performative pride. He pulled her tight against his side, his fingers digging into her hip bone just hard enough to hurt, hidden by the fabric of her dress. "I told her to take a load off, relax upstairs. She works too hard, doesn't she, folks?" A ripple of polite laughter went through the group. "Can I get you a drink, honey?" Marcus asked, leaning in. His breath smelled of expensive scotch and mints. "Maybe a water? You look a little flushed." The condescension dripped from his voice like poison. "You look flushed. Code for, you look emotional. Pull it together." Elena looked at him. Really looked at him. For years, she had seen the man he wanted to be. The protector. The provider. Now, she only saw the man from the video. The man who could look into the tear-filled eyes of his own child and feel nothing but annoyance. "No, Marcus," Elena said. Her voice was steady, shockingly calm even to her own ears. It cut through the ambient noise of the party like a razor. "I don't want a drink." The smile on Marcus's face froze. He sensed the shift. He was an apex predator in the boardroom. He knew when the wind changed. He squeezed her hip harder. "All right then. Well, why don't you go check on the appetizers? I think the shrimp is running low." Dismissed. Sent to the kitchen. Put back in her box. Elena didn't move. She gently, firmly, peeled his hand off her waist and dropped it. The physical rejection was small, but in front of his boss and colleagues, it was a slap in the face. The air in the circle grew instantly awkward. "Actually," Elena said, turning to address the room. She raised her voice slightly, just enough to carry over the music. "I don't think we need more shrimp. But we do need some entertainment. Marcus was just telling you about his philosophy on, what was it? Discipline?" Marcus's eyes narrowed. He laughed, a nervous, staccato sound. "Elena, honey, you're tired. Let's talk in the kitchen." He reached for her arm. She stepped back, out of his reach. "I think everyone should see the real highlight of the evening," Elena said, her eyes locking onto his. "You love showing off this house, Marcus. You love your state-of-the-art technology. The security system you installed? You're always bragging about the 4K resolution." She pulled her phone from her pocket. Marcus looked confused now. He wasn't scared yet. He was just annoyed that she was going off script. He probably thought she was going to show a slideshow of their vacation or some tribute video she had made for him. His narcissism wouldn't allow him to imagine a scenario where he wasn't the hero. "Oh, the security system," Marcus chuckled, turning back to Richard. "Top of the line. Can spot a squirrel at 50 yards. Safety first, right?" "Right," Elena said. "Safety first." She tapped the screen of her phone. Cast to living room TV. The massive 75-inch screen mounted above the fireplace flickered. The slideshow of their smiling faces, Elena and Marcus in Maui, Elena and Marcus at a gala, Marcus holding a trophy, vanished. The screen went black for a heartbeat, the loading icon spinning. The room went quiet. People sensing the tension, or perhaps just drawn by the sudden change in the visual environment, stopped talking. The jazz music seemed to fade into the background as 50 pairs of eyes turned toward the glowing screen. "Elena, what is this?" Marcus hissed, his smile finally dropping. He stepped toward her. "Stop it. Just watch," she said. The video feed snapped onto the screen. It was stark. Brutal. The wide-angle lens of the living room camera captured everything in clinical, cold detail. On the screen, the guests saw themselves. But it was from 45 minutes ago. They saw the party in full swing. They saw the backs of their own heads. Is this live?" someone asked, confused. Then, on the screen, a small figure entered from the hallway. A collective, Might have been the expected reaction to seeing a child in pajamas. But the body language on the screen stopped it in its throat. Lily looked terrified. She was creeping, not walking. The guests watched as the on-screen Lily tripped. They watched the water spill. And then they saw Marcus. In the room, the real Marcus went pale. He lunged for the remote on the coffee table. "Technical difficulties," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Elena, turn it off. It's a glitch." But he was too slow. And frankly, nobody was looking at him anymore. They were paralyzed by what was happening on the giant screen. They watched the man they were just drinking with, the man who had just charmed them with stories of his philanthropy, transform into a monster. The audio was crisp. The silence in the room amplified it. "You clumsy little mistake." The voice boomed from the surround sound speakers. It was unmistakable. It wasn't the smooth, baritone voice of the party host. It was a guttural, venomous sneer. A woman near the front gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. On screen, Marcus grabbed the child. The violence of the movement was shocking on the big screen. The grip on the arm, the jerk of the head, the way Lily's body went limp with learned helplessness. Elena watched the faces of the guests. She saw the blood drain from Richard's face. She saw the younger associates look down at their shoes, ashamed. She saw the horrifying realization dawn on them. We are drinking his liquor while he abuses his child. The video continued. The drag to the door. The shove. The lock. The sound of the lock clicking shut echoed through the silent living room like a gunshot. And then the kicker. The moment that sealed his fate. The guests watched the on-screen Marcus pause, check his reflection in the glass, and then turn the smile back on. They watched him walk back into the party, back into their midst, and laugh. The video ended. The screen froze on Marcus's smiling, fraudulent face. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. It was the kind of silence that rings in your ears. Elena didn't look at the screen. She looked at Marcus. He was standing by the coffee table, the remote halfway to the TV. He looked stripped, naked. The suave executive was gone. In his place was a small, petty, vicious man who had just been caught with his hand in the jar. He looked around the room, his eyes darting frantically, looking for an ally. Looking for someone, anyone, to share a conspiratorial glance with. You know how kids are, right? But there were no allies. Not tonight. Richard, the boss, was the first to move. He set his glass down on the mantelpiece with a deliberate clink. He didn't look at Marcus. He looked at Elena. I am so sorry, Elena, he said quietly. Then he turned and walked toward the door. That broke the dam. It wasn't a slow exit. It was a stampede of awkwardness. Nobody wanted to be there for a second longer. The illusion of the perfect, successful family hadn't just cracked. It had shattered into a million sharp pieces, and everyone was afraid of getting cut. "I think we should go," a woman whispered to her husband. "Yeah. Now." People grabbed their coats. Some didn't even bother. They just walked out into the cold. There were no goodbyes. "No, thanks for having us." Just the sound of shuffling feet and the front door opening and closing, opening and closing. Marcus stood frozen in the middle of his living room, watching his social standing evaporate. He tried to stop a few of them. Bill, wait, let me explain," he stammered, reaching out to a colleague. "It's not what it looks like. She has behavioral issues. We're working with a specialist. It's a discipline technique." Bill recoiled from Marcus's touch like he was radioactive. "Don't," Bill said, his voice flat. "Just don't." Within 3 minutes, the house was empty. The caterers had vanished into the kitchen, likely hiding until they could leave safely. It was just Elena and Marcus. And the silent witness, still frozen on the screen above them. The front door clicked shut for the final time. The silence rushed back in, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was dangerous. Marcus turned to Elena. The look on his face wasn't shame. It wasn't remorse. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. "What did you do?" he whispered. The volume of his voice was low, but the intensity was screaming. He walked toward her. Slowly. Stalking. "I asked you a question," he said, his voice rising. "What the hell did you just do?" "I showed them the truth," Elena said. She stood her ground, though every instinct in her body screamed at her to run. She kept the phone in her hand, her thumb hovering over the emergency button. "I showed them who you really are." Marcus laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Who I really are. You think that video defines me? You think a 3-minute clip of me dealing with an unruly brat cancels out everything I've built?" He was doing it. The shift. Denial. Justification. She spilled water, Marcus, Elena said. She's 8 years old. You locked her outside in 30-degree weather. I was teaching her a lesson. Marcus roared, the veneer finally cracking completely. He threw his hands up. She needs to learn respect. She needs to learn that actions have consequences. And you just humiliated me. In front of Richard. In front of the firm. He ran a hand over his face, pacing the room like a caged animal. Do you have any idea what you just cost me? That promotion? The partnership? Gone. Poof. Because you couldn't handle a little parenting dispute privately. This wasn't a parenting dispute, Elena said. This was abuse. And it's not the first time, is it? Marcus stopped pacing. He turned to her, his eyes cold and dead. You're hysterical. You've always been hysterical. That's why you need me. You think anyone out there cares about you? You're nothing without me, Elena. You're a mid-level manager with a mortgage you can't afford and a kid with issues. He was trying to make her feel small. He was trying to shrink her back down into the box so he could put the lid back on. But it wasn't working. The video had done something to Elena, too. It had broken the spell. I closed the Henderson deal today, she said quietly. What? Marcus blinked, thrown off by the non-sequitur. I closed the deal. The one you said I couldn't do. I'm not nothing, Marcus. And I'm certainly not yours anymore. Marcus stared at her. His nostrils flared. He took another step closer, invading her personal space. She could feel the heat radiating off him. This was the all-is-lost moment. The moment where the emotional violence threatens to turn physical. He loomed over her, using his height to intimidate. You think you can just destroy my life and walk away? You think I'm going to let you take my daughter? She's scared of you, Elena said, her voice shaking slightly now, but not from weakness, from the sheer effort of holding back her rage. She's terrified of her own father. I saw it in her eyes tonight. I'm not letting you near her again. Marcus grabbed her arm. Not hard, not yet. But it was a test. A boundary check. You're not going anywhere. You're going to call Richard. You're going to tell him you edited that video. You're going to tell him you're having a breakdown. You're going to fix this. Elena looked down at his hand on her arm. The same hand that had grabbed Lily. Something inside her snapped. Not a break, but a locking into place. The final gear turning. Let go of me, she said. Or what? Marcus sneered. You'll play another movie? Or I'll call the police, she said. And I'll show them the footage. And then I'll show them the bruise on Lily's arm from last month. And the hole in the drywall upstairs that you covered with a painting. I have it all, Marcus. I've been blind, but I'm not blind anymore. Marcus released her arm like it burned him. He took a step back, looking at her with a mix of disgust and, for the first time, genuine fear. Not fear of her, but fear of the consequences she represented. You're crazy, he muttered. You've lost your mind. Maybe, Elena said. But I'm taking my daughter. She turned her back on him. It was the most dangerous thing she could do, but she had to show him she wasn't afraid. She walked to the stairs. If you walk out that door, Marcus yelled after her, his voice echoing in the empty, silent house. Don't you dare come back. You hear me? You leave, and you leave with nothing. No money. No car. I'll freeze the accounts, Elena. You'll be on the street. Elena didn't stop. She kept climbing. I'd rather sleep on the street than in a bed next to you, she called back. She reached the top of the stairs and ran to Lily's room. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by the cold reality of logistics. She had 20 minutes, maybe less, before Marcus's shock turned into actionable rage. She grabbed a duffel bag from the closet. She didn't pack clothes for herself. She packed for Lily. Warm socks. The teddy bear she couldn't sleep without. Her school uniform. She grabbed her own passport and birth certificate from the safe in the master closet. Thank God she had the code, not him. She grabbed the emergency cash she had been stashing in a shoebox for a rainy day. Well, it was pouring now. She went back to Lily's room. Her daughter was still asleep, curled in a tight ball. Elena shook her gently. Lily. Baby. Wake up. Lily's eyes fluttered open. She looked confused, then scared. Mommy. Is Daddy still mad? No, baby, Elena lied. Daddy is. Daddy is staying here. We're going on an adventure. Just us girls. Now. Lily rubbed her eyes. It's dark. I know. But we have to go now. It's a secret mission. Can you be brave for me? Lily nodded. She trusted her mother. And more than that, she seemed relieved to be leaving the house. Elena helped her into her winter coat and boots. She hoisted the duffel bag onto her shoulder. It was heavy, but it felt lighter than the weight of the secrets she had been carrying for years. They walked out into the hallway. Elena listened. Downstairs, she could hear glass breaking. Marcus was throwing a tantrum. He was smashing the things he loved, his vases, his glasses, because he couldn't smash her. She led Lily to the back stairs, the servants' stairs that led to the kitchen. They crept down, the sound of Marcus's rage echoing from the living room. Ungrateful. Crash. I gave you everything. Crash. They reached the kitchen. It was empty. The caterers had fled. Elena opened the back door. The cold wind hit them again, but this time it felt cleansing. It felt like freedom. They stepped out into the night. The driveway was empty of guests, but the black SUV, Marcus's pride and joy, was blocking Elena's car. Damn it, she whispered. Mommy, what do we do? Lily asked, her voice trembling. Elena looked at her car, trapped. Then she looked at the street. It was a long walk to the main road where she could catch a cab. It was freezing. They had nowhere to go. No hotel booked. Her accounts might be frozen by morning. She was choosing homelessness. She was choosing uncertainty. She was choosing to blow up her life. But then she looked at Lily. She saw the way her daughter was holding her hand, tight, like a lifeline. She saw the bruise starting to darken on Lily's arm. Elena squared her shoulders. We walk, baby, Elena said. We walk. They started down the driveway, the wind whipping their hair. Behind them, the house glowed like a beacon of warmth and wealth. Inside, there was a fire, expensive wine, and a soft bed. Outside, there was nothing but the dark. But as Elena looked back one last time, she saw the silhouette of Marcus in the window, pacing, drinking, raging at an empty room. He was the one who was trapped. He was trapped in his own ego, his own cruelty. She was free. Or so she thought, because as they reached the end of the driveway, headlights swept across them. A car was coming. Was it a guest returning? The police? Or had Marcus called in a favor? Elena pulled Lily into the shadows of the hedges, her heart hammering against her ribs. This is the reality of leaving an abuser. The movie ends when the wife walks out the door. But in real life, that's when the danger truly begins. The most dangerous time for a victim is the moment they leave. Elena had stripped Marcus of his reputation, his dignity, and his control. A man like that doesn't just let you walk away. He doesn't just let you win. And this brings us to the question that will define the rest of this story. When you take everything from a narcissist, what do they have left to lose? The answer is nothing. And a man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous enemy you can have. Elena and Lily are out in the cold, but the fire is just getting started. Listen to what happened next, where the courtroom becomes the new battlefield and the silent witness speaks one last time. There is a specific kind of danger that arises when a tyrant realizes his reign is over. Psychologists call it an extinction burst. When a behavior that used to get results, intimidation, gaslighting, rage, suddenly stops working, the subject doesn't just give up. They double down. They scream louder. They hit harder. They burn the earth hoping that the smoke will force you back into submission. Elena stood at the end of her driveway, the cold November wind cutting through her coat, holding the trembling hand of her daughter, Lily. The headlights that had swept across them didn't belong to a savior. They belonged to the black SUV that had just swerved aggressively across the bottom of the driveway, blocking their path to the street. The engine cut. The heavy door slammed. Marcus stepped out into the harsh glare of the headlights. He wasn't the polished executive anymore. He wasn't the charming host. He was a silhouette of pure, distilled malice, backlit by the high beams like a villain in a slasher film. He didn't run. He walked toward them with a slow, predatory gait. He was blocking their exit. Where do you think you're going? Marcus asked. His voice was dangerously low, a growl that vibrated in the freezing air. Get back in the house, Elena. You are making a scene. Elena tightened her grip on Lily's hand. She could feel the child's small fingernails digging into her palm. We are leaving, Marcus. Move your car. I said get back inside. Marcus roared, his composure snapping. He closed the distance between them, towering over her, using his physical size to create a wall of intimidation. He raised a hand, pointing a shaking finger in her face. You don't get to walk away from me. You don't get to ruin my night, embarrass me in front of my partners, and then just waltz out with my daughter. You are nobody without me. You hear me? Nobody. He was menacing. He was trying to herd them back toward the house, back into the shadows where he could control the narrative, where there were no witnesses. He lunged slightly, as if to grab Lily's other arm. Elena didn't flinch. She stepped in front of Lily, physically shielding her child with her own body. This was the moment. The climax. The point where the victim either crumbles or conquers. For 10 years, Elena had been afraid of this man. She had been afraid of his anger, afraid of his disappointment, afraid of his financial power. But as she looked at him now, red-faced, spitting venom, blocking a mother and child in the freezing cold, she didn't see power. She saw desperation. She realized she was holding the ace card. A card she had kept up her sleeve for years, never thinking she would have to play it. "You think you own everything, don't you?" Elena said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it had a steel core that stopped Marcus in his tracks. "I paid for the clothes on your back." Marcus spat. "I paid for this life." "You paid for the cars," Elena corrected him, her voice cutting like glass. "You paid for the vacations. You paid for the image. But you forgot one thing, Marcus." She took a step toward him, forcing him to hold his ground. "You don't own this apartment." Marcus blinked, the confusion momentarily overriding his rage. "What?" "This apartment," Elena said, gesturing to the sprawling building behind them. "The down payment. The deed. It's not in your name. It's in mine." It was the truth. Years ago, when they bought the place, it had been purchased using the inheritance Elena had received from her grandmother. Marcus, busy with his empire building and obsessed with his own liquid assets, hadn't cared about the paperwork at the time. He had let her handle it. He had assumed that what was hers was his, because he owned her. That's a technicality," Marcus stammered, his confidence faltering. "It's a legal fact," Elena said. "This is my property. You are a guest. And as of right now, you are a trespasser." The power dynamic in the driveway shifted so violently it was almost palpable. Marcus looked at the house, his castle, his stage, and realized the foundation was crumbling beneath his feet. "You wouldn't," he whispered. "I am filing for divorce in the morning," Elena said, delivering the ultimatum. "I am taking full custody of Lily. And you? You have 1 week to vacate the premises. If you are not out of my apartment in 7 days, I will call the police. I will show them the deed. And then I will show them the video." Marcus opened his mouth to argue, to threaten, to gaslight. But he looked into Elena's eyes and saw something he had never seen before: absolute, unshakable resolve. He looked at the phone in her hand, the device that held his destruction. He realized he had no leverage. He couldn't hit her, not out here, not with the neighbors potentially watching, not with the digital evidence already secured. He couldn't cut her off financially from a home she owned. He crumbled. His shoulders slumped. The monstrous silhouette shrank back into a defeated, pathetic man standing in the cold. He looked away, muttering a curse, and stepped aside. "Move," Elena commanded. Marcus shuffled out of the path. Elena didn't look back. She squeezed Lily's hand. "Come on, baby." They walked past him, past the blocking SUV, and out onto the street. A pair of headlights appeared down the road. Not a threat this time, but a ride. A taxi Elena had managed to hail on her app while pretending to check the video earlier. They got in. As the car pulled away, Elena watched through the rear window. Marcus was still standing in the driveway, a small, dark figure dwarfed by the house he no longer ruled. Falling action, the refuge. The taxi ride was silent, a blur of city lights and exhaustion. Lily had fallen asleep against Elena's side almost instantly, her small body finally relaxing after hours of tension. They arrived at Aunt Sarah's house 20 minutes later. Aunt Sarah was Elena's older sister, a woman who had never liked Marcus, who had seen through the charm offensive years ago, but who had respected Elena's choice to stay. When the door opened, there were no questions. Aunt Sarah took one look at Elena's pale face and Lily's sleeping form and simply opened her arms. The warmth of the house was a physical shock. It smelled of cinnamon and laundry detergent, a stark contrast to the sterile, expensive scent of the apartment they had left behind. He's done," Elena whispered, her voice finally breaking as she stepped into the hallway. "I know," Sarah said, pulling them both into a hug. "I know. You're safe here." For the first time that night, the immediate physical danger was gone. There were no cameras here. No judgment. No performance. Elena carried Lily to the spare bedroom, tucking her in under a heavy quilt. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, just listening to her daughter breathe. She expected to feel sad. She expected to feel grieving for the marriage she had just detonated. But as she sat there in the dark, she realized she didn't feel grief. She felt light. She felt like a diver who had been holding her breath for 10 years and had finally broken the surface. The legal battle. The next morning, the reality of the war set in. Marcus wouldn't go quietly, not permanently. He would lawyer up. He would try to spin the narrative. But Elena was ready. 2 days later, she sat in a high-rise office in downtown, across the desk from Rosalind Price. Rosalind was a legend in family law, a shark in a silk blouse who specialized in high-conflict divorces. "So," Rosalind said, adjusting her glasses, "he's a partner at a finance firm. He has resources. He's going to claim you're unstable. He's going to claim parental alienation. What do we have?" Elena placed her phone on the polished mahogany desk. "I have the silent witness." She played the video. Rosalind watched. Her face, usually a mask of professional detachment, tightened. She watched the spill, the grab, the shove, the lock, the smile. When the video ended, Rosalind leaned back in her chair and let out a long, low whistle. "Well," Rosalind said, a grim smile touching her lips, "that changes things. Is it enough?" Elena asked, her hands twisting in her lap. "Elena," Rosalind said, looking her dead in the eye, "this isn't just leverage. This is a nuclear deterrent. In a custody battle, a judge looks for patterns of behavior. This video shows physical abuse, emotional cruelty, and a complete lack of empathy, all in 4K resolution. It ensures you get full custody. And if he tries to fight it, if he tries to drag you through court, we release this to the public. We subpoena the rest of the footage. We bury him." The relief was so intense it made Elena dizzy. The video footage ensured she would get a quick divorce. The monster had been declawed. The departure. The week passed in a blur of paperwork and temporary living. Elena stayed at Aunt Sarah's, refusing to answer Marcus's calls. All communication went through Rosalind. On the 7th day, the deadline arrived. Elena didn't go alone. She went with Rosalind and a police escort, just in case. They pulled up to the apartment building. The moving truck was already gone. They went upstairs. The door was unlocked. Elena stepped inside. The apartment was eerie. It was quiet. The heavy, oppressive energy that Marcus generated was gone. He had vacated the apartment. He had taken his things, his expensive scotch, his golf clubs, his suits. The family photos on the wall were gone, leaving pale rectangles on the paint. The massive TV, the screen that had exposed him, was still mounted on the wall, dark and silent. He had left a mess in the study, papers scattered, a chair overturned, a final petty tantrum. But he was gone. Elena walked through the rooms. She touched the walls. For the first time since they had moved in, the space felt like hers. It didn't feel like a stage anymore. It felt like a home waiting to happen. The resolution, new status quo. Time has a way of smoothing over the sharpest edges of trauma. It doesn't erase them, but it softens them, turning jagged rocks into river stones. 1 month later, the apartment looked different. The sterile, white and gray aesthetic that Marcus loved was gone. Elena had brought in color. Throw pillows in warm yellows and teals. Rugs that were soft, not expensive silk you couldn't walk on. Elena was in the kitchen making dinner. Not catered appetizers, but spaghetti, messy, bubbling, comforting spaghetti. The door opened. Lily ran in, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. "Mommy, I got a gold star on my spelling test." "That's amazing, baby." Elena spun around, a genuine smile lighting up her face. Lily looked different, too. The shadows under her eyes were fading. She wasn't walking on eggshells. She was loud. She slammed the door. She dropped her bag on the floor. And nobody yelled at her. Amari, Lily, was healing through therapy and love. They were a team. A small, imperfect, happy team. Elena walked over to the sliding glass doors. The curtains were open. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the living room. She looked up at the ceiling. The camera was still there. The silent witness. But the red recording light wasn't ominous anymore. It was just a piece of plastic. A tool. It had done its job. It had told the truth when no one else would. The symbolic end. Elena slid the glass door open. "Come on, Lily," she called. "Dinner's almost ready. Let's get some fresh air." They stepped out onto the balcony. This was the site of the trauma. This was the concrete patch where a little girl had frozen while her father laughed. It should have been a place of fear. But Elena had been busy. She had replanted the dead planters with winter-blooming pansies and hardy ferns. She had added string lights that twinkled like captured stars. She had put down an outdoor rug and 2 big, soft beanbag chairs. It had been turned into a cozy corner. Lily didn't hesitate. She ran to the railing, looking out at the city lights. "Look, Mommy. You can see the bridge." Elena stood beside her, wrapping an arm around her daughter's shoulders. The wind was still cool, but they were dressed for it. They were warm. "It's beautiful," Elena said. They sat down on the beanbags, under the stars, safe and together. The city hummed below them, a million lives continuing on. Elena looked back at the glass door. She could see the reflection of the living room. She could see the empty space where Marcus used to stand and pontificate. He was gone. His reputation was in tatters. He was living in a serviced apartment somewhere, likely telling anyone who would listen that his ex-wife was crazy. But it didn't matter. His voice couldn't reach them here. The silent witness, the camera, was no longer needed to prove their reality. They were living it. Elena took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the crisp night air. She looked at Lily, who was laughing at something down on the street. "We made it," Elena whispered. And for the first time in a long time, she knew it wasn't a lie. Narrator. So, what is the cost of freedom? For Elena, it was the destruction of the life she thought she was supposed to have. It was the public humiliation of her husband. It was the terrifying leap into the unknown. But as she sits on that balcony, holding her daughter's hand, she knows the price was cheap. Because the currency she paid with was pain, and what she bought was a future. If you are watching this and you are trapped in a house that feels like a stage, waiting for the director to yell cut, remember this. You are the writer of your own story. And sometimes you have to burn the script to find your voice. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, hit that like button and subscribe for more. And let us know in the comments, what would you have done with the video? Would you have played it for the guests or taken it straight to the police? See you in the next one.